Today, this is the 10th annual meeting in Yalta, and it is a real pleasure that representatives of economic, political elite, not only of Ukraine, but I would say of the whole world, gathered together. Geography is extensively represented today. And it is very good that today this conference is participated by politicians who represent both the government and the opposition, and we have good opportunity to discuss a wide range of issues of our agenda, and primarily one of the issues which is of concern not only for Ukrainian society. I believe this is to be the geopolitical issue, and I mean the signing of the association agreement in Vilnius. And I'm very much pleased that today my partner is a long-standing friend of Ukraine, the President of the Republic of Lithuania, Dalia Grybauskaitė. It stands to reason that today we will have a good chance to debate all key points which are high on the agenda of the whole world. I mean the civil conflict in Syria and economic crisis. So I invite every one of you to this dialogue. And I would like to say that Ukraine is going its natural way, the way of the development. For over 20 years, the people, the politicians are trying to upgrade the country, and this way is not an easy road. Starting from 2010, we initiated systematic reforms, and the national plan was approved at that time, and now it is being implemented. The linchpin of this modernization is bringing Ukraine closer to European standards on every direction and venue. It is sufficient to say that recently the most important for our state documents have been adopted, and these are the tax code, the budget code, the criminal procedure code, and so on. Laws which recently have been passed together in the parliament by the representatives of the majority and the opposition, bring Ukraine closer to the European standards. We managed to establish such partnership relations with the European Commission, which enabled us to commonly elaborate the action plan, which is being implemented today, and Ukraine now shows what potential we have. We are well aware that in November, modernization will not be over. It will be carried on, and to a large extent, everything is ahead of us. And Ukraine is the first interested in it. For this short period of time of a little bit more than 3 years, we were able to have current constant consultations of the experts of the highest level. We enjoy partnership relations with the representatives of big business, I mean investors who came to work in Ukraine. Everything which relates to the economy of Ukraine, we have been moving in this direction thanks to the close cooperation with our partners who work today in Ukraine, and I would like to welcome all of them here in this hall, and I see a lot of them, the European businessmen, Russian businessmen, because establishing conditions for doing business is the only opportunity for the development of the country, attraction of investments, high-end technologies, and we understand perfectly well that we still need to overcome many hurdles on this road, and this is the fight against corruption, the legislation improvement on every venue, and we will be doing this work together. Today, one of the pressing issues which is of alarm to the whole world, and this is the war in Syria. What can be the attitude towards war? Any common sense person will be negative in his reaction. What do we want today? We want peace and prosperity, and how to address this issue. It is very good that recently events began to develop in a peaceful manner through political settlement. Today, it is of paramount importance to maintain this trend, and on the part of Ukraine, I would like to propose the participation of our experts, the Ukrainian technologists, to destroy chemical weapons in Syria. We have this experience. We do have the movable facilities patented by Ukraine and which proved its efficacy in practice, and we stand ready together with the specialists to make use of them and to early destroy chemical weapons in Syria. This is our tangible and concrete proposal. Coming back to the issue of the economic crisis, this question is so wide that it cannot be separated from such issues as the European integration or integrational processes on the whole, which are taking place the world over in a globalized world. Ukraine is no exception, because Ukraine is situated, I would say, between two big monsters, the European Union and Russia. We feel it on a daily basis, and to ignore this or to treat it lightly is not in our interest and power. And so I am grateful to our partners in the European Union and in Russia for their understanding of this question. We have not wanted, we do not want, and we will never want to set integrational processes in opposition. The West or East, we want to keep them united. And on this road, Ukraine is moving forward confidently by the way of modernization, establishing conditions for doing business, and clearing those obstacles which are now present in trade issues. So that this process could closely link us together for us to be able to create the single economic space from Vancouver to Vladivostok. This is feasible, and we can do this together. As regards relations, they have been determined. Ukraine is moving confidently on the way of the European integration regarding the relations with the customs union. We are seeking for this model, and I'm sure we will find it. It doesn't have to hamper the European integration of Ukraine. It doesn't have to create difficulties, but it must solve these difficulties. Only then we will get positive results from integration processes. The next point. It is the development of Ukraine. We have witnessed that if it had not been for the road of reforms during all these years, it would be more difficult for Ukraine than it is now. All in all these years we have not decreased social standards. What is very important for the people, we did not raise taxes, but we conversely lowered it, and we continued this way the liberalization of economy. And thanks to this, we have the positive economic outcome. Gradually, economy is emerging from the shadow, and as this expands, the budget receipts grow. It is important. These years, the confidence of the population grows toward the banking system, and the deposits of our citizens increased by recent years by more than 8%. 4 years, we have the stable financial situation, the banking situation in the country, and all these lays the groundwork for confidence towards the Ukrainian currency, and we connect this success to the reforms we have undertaken, and we continue to move with confidence on this road. And coming to an end in my brief remarks, I would like, before my today's partner speak from this rostrum, I would like to wish all of us to confidently build and develop the great Europe together. Ukraine will make its own contribution, but a lot will depend on how we will be successful in building on this relationship, and we expect them to be efficient. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Yanukovych. I'd now like to invite President Dalia Grybauskaitė to say a few words, please.
So I'm very happy to see across the window. And this is very symbolic, because sunshine landed, then we're starting the conference about future of Europe and future of Ukraine. And I think it's also a good sign for all of us. And I wish, of course, for the conference the best results and the most interesting discussions. But now, I suppose, to be a little bit official, because I'm representing today the presidency of European Council. So now everything will be serious. And then we can answer any questions you would like. Okay, so dear participants, President, it is my honor to address all of you in this very historic palace. I've never been here before. While it was supposed to visit Crimea in general, but never been in Crimea and in Yalta also. But this building is filled with the spirit of wider Europe already. Seeing all of you here, and a lot of faces which I already know from my working experiences, from Europe's east, west, south, and north also strengthens the feeling of being in the center of Europe today here. And my wish for all participants of this conference, of course, is to maintain this feeling as very much viable. It is, of course, not easy, since it requires efforts and determination, but it is really possible. With the united support and bold steps of Ukraine's leadership and people. With the assistance of the European Union and friends of Ukraine, with a firm belief in the idea of Europe. Today, Ukraine is at the center of attention of all Europeans who are not indifferent to our continent's security and prosperity. It is important that Europe is also at the center of Ukrainian policy and politics today. The words of President Viktor Yanukovych at the opening of the first session of the Verkhovna Rada recently clearly confirmed that Ukraine has made association with Europe a strategic choice, which was confirmed today, except monstrous allegory. So, and again, serious, this choice has been confirmed both by the position and opposition, and I very much welcome it. Consensus and determination are there on the Ukrainian side. And let me tell you that there is also determination on the European side, European Union side. And this will be confirmed you in these 2 days by European Union representatives. But what remains to be done to consolidate mutually expressed political will with practical demonstration that Ukraine is ready to think, to act, and to feel European. Nothing is done until finally it is done. And that's how we say in Europe. That means there remain very clear and very specific tasks to do to embed Ukraine in Europe and Europe in Ukraine. And you know them very well. First, there is a need to establish legal guarantees of fair and transparent elections in Ukraine. Second, the creation of a level playing field for all political parties, groups, and movements is a requirement attribute of a healthy legal and judicial system. Selective application of laws, unbalanced powers, and ambiguity of legal framework are disastrous for functioning democracy. That applies to Ukraine also. Third, non-compliance and questioning of the undertaken international commitments lead to distrust, just like ambiguous business climate and rooted corruption discourages investments, trade, and economic development. We have a unique historic chance to bind Europe and Ukraine together. Europe really wishes to have Ukraine as a truly European partner, the one which is able to contribute to Europe's development and security, the one which is an example for other players in the region. Europe is about free will, not about imposition or intimidation. It is the decision of Ukraine, its people and leaders, to be with the European Union or not. Europe is open and determined to strengthen cooperation with Ukraine, but it will never push Ukraine by force. A country's way of development cannot be imposed from the outside, and any attempt to do so is a breach of international law. Lithuania, as well as Ukraine and other countries in the region, are facing today, let's be open and frank, sanctions from the third countries intended to block Ukraine's association with Europe. It demonstrates weakness, and it is illegal, and it reveals the real face of those who impose us such sanctions. All decisions in the European Union are consensual, and the European Union will follow them consistently. This is what it means to be European. But consensus is not easy to reach. But if it has reached, everyone expects its full implementation. The same is expected from partners. It is a question of trust, and it applies to everyone and everywhere. But association agreement or the implementation of commitments to the World Trade Organization. If you promise, you fulfill. The reforms Ukraine is engaged in are very good for Ukraine, first of all. They are not implemented to satisfy Brussels or somebody else. They have to be implemented to satisfy the needs of Ukrainian people and your future goals. The European Union is open to share its best practices and experiences. Lithuania embraced it 20 years ago, and today we already hold the presidency of the Council of the European Union. So the way, as example, is already here. Finally, association with the European Union is in no way directed against anybody or somebody. Europe knows very well that building barriers is a destructive exercise. Europe's survival is based on openness, but not isolation. Any attempt to depict the Eastern Partnership as a measure to fight someone is wrong. Dear participants, we are already counting the days to Vilnius Summit. With time becoming shorter, pressure is increasing on us and will be increased from the fed countries from outside. I wish Ukraine and its leaders and its people, of course, to the first, strength to resist that pressures, political will and resolution to withstand everything which still is coming and will come. Ukraine must be architect of its own future by its own people. Ukraine is too big, too strong, and too important to allow others to decide on your future. I invite you to make the Vilnius Summit a historic, not only for Ukraine, but also for Europe. And let's make use of the opportunity we have in front of us. And let's anchor Ukraine in Europe and Europe in Ukraine. I wish you all fruitful discussions, and I hope for always, for better future.
President Grybauskaitė, President Yanukovych, thank you very much for those wonderful remarks. Listening to you, President Grybauskaitė, I found myself thinking about the Great Lithuanian Commonwealth, which was a time in history when Ukraine was participating very intensely in Europe in partnership with Lithuania. We have a really wonderful opportunity. The two presidents have pointed out this is a historic moment for Ukraine and Europe, and now we get to ask them some questions. I have the privilege of asking the first question, and I will ask President Yanukovych, because this is his country. Pане президенте, перше питання до вас. Ви говорили в своєму виступі.
You said in your presentation about two monsters, in between which Ukraine is located, and one monster, European monster, has already spoken for a little bit. Could you tell us, a very beautiful monster, by the way, could you tell us what would be your reaction, what would be your vision of the possible reaction of another monster to this Vilnius summit? What are you expecting from that other side?
We continue our dialogue with Russia. And in this dialogue, first of all, we rest on the memorandum that has been recently signed in relations between Ukraine and the Customs Union, as well as the agreement on free trade between the CIS countries. And it goes without saying that we say there is the WTO, which has its own rules, and everyone must abide by these rules. Kazakhstan is pacing towards the World Trade Organization, and I'm convinced that Belarus will follow this way as well. Well, today we have every good reason to say that we do not have to go into extremities. In no way we need to carry on this dialogue. It is absolutely natural, and we are not against considering the provisions of the customs union, and which does not run counter to the rules of the WTO and the association between Ukraine and the European Union, and to accede in part which will not be, which will comply with the national interests of Ukraine. It is needed for us to move forward on the way of the integration. I'm convinced, and we also put this question, Russia will also follow the way of the European standards. So, in the nearest future, there will be no controversies, differences, or obstacles that will hamper us from building our common future.
So, okay, I see people are getting ready. Lord Risby, do you want to start? Is there a microphone? Here you go.
Richard Risby, Chairman of the British Ukrainian Society. Mr. President, all European economies have gone through a very, very difficult phase in the last 5 years, including very high unemployment. As you face the challenges as we go ahead over the next few years, what are your priorities in terms of economic reform to face up to the challenges that all of us in Europe are now having to deal with?
I have already mentioned a couple of words in my remarks that recently we have been working a lot about establishing conditions for doing business, economy liberalization, and all reforms we are implementing today. Well, we are convinced that these reforms give every opportunity to increment the production rate and the growth rate in economy without attracting investments, without up-to-date technologies. To talk about the development of the economy is impossible. Nearly 20% of all resources in Ukraine are processed, and the depth of the processing is not big, but the 80%, we need to find opportunities how to process these resources, and to this end, we need new technologies. The PPP, private-public partnership, that we are implementing, and the laws we have passed recently also favor the efficiency of doing business in Ukraine. Thank you.
Asland has a question, so Anders, please.
Thank you very much. Anders Åslund, Peterson Institute for International Economics. У меня вопрос для вас, господин президента. Вы нам сегодня дали прекрасно. И мне очень приятно слышать, что вы сказали сегодня, особенно о европейской интеграции. И я тоже прочитал ваш отличный доклад 3 сентября. И сейчас это действительно выглядит, как Украина может делать прорыв. Но это тоже так выглядело в 2010 году.
Look like that back in 2010. You mentioned reforms that you made there. And then I talked to the businessmen here, and they said, unfortunately, that we cannot see that there is less corruption. Transparency International is saying same thing. What can you say now? This time there will be truly breakthrough. There will be less corruption due to the reforms that you are now suggesting quite properly. Thank you.
Well, it is really a painful issue you have raised, and we are well aware that to go the repressive way is to go nowhere. That's why we have embarked on the road of modernization, improvement of the legislation on fighting against corruption. It is true, Ukraine is very slowly going up in the rating on doing business, and the rating agencies confirm this. But we are not happy or satisfied with the slow pace. We want to do it more quickly. So every time we gather with the investors, and we have quite a number of such meetings, we always ask what hampers doing business in Ukraine. And I reiterate that improvement of the legislation in fighting corruption as the main, our objective, consistent approach, and that's what we will be applying. Of course, the reform of the law enforcement agencies and the implementation of the criminal procedure code, the adoption of the new law on the public prosecutor's office. All these issues are high on the agenda of Ukraine, and we are working on them.
Thank you very much. I think there is a question from Mr. Klitschko. Would you like to? Okay, if you could allow Mr. Klitschko to speak first. Dear Mr. President, as a representative of the opposition, you are not, of course, you shouldn't be expecting complimentary questions from me. I have heard your words, your presentation was very interesting. What is very pleasant, interesting to hear that the environment for investments is changing, and the investors are looking with totally different eyes on Ukraine, that investments in the banking sector are increasing. I think it seems to me we're talking about two different countries, though. The European Treaty, a signing of the European Treaty, is an opportunity for us to go out to find a solution for the systemic crisis that we have, and the failure to sign this association agreement will be basically mean that we are losing the chance to go out of this crisis. And I think many people can confirm that GDPs are decreasing, the investments are decreasing, the people are leaving the country, and it doesn't look that good. And unless we sign the association agreement, could you think of a chance or of an opportunity, and that there will be a liability and responsibility for non-signing this agreement, and it will be basically the fault of the government, current government, and this will be the collapse of all the possible plans? Will you have the guts to resign in this case?
You and me, we are different people a little bit. You are a young person. I know, and you know, what it means to resist, to bear the brunt, and to take the blow. I took many blows in my life, and I went during my lifetime holding these strikes and resisting. Today, we have the task. I will not be that pathetic as you do. We passed the way of the development for many years. President Kuchma is present here. other two presidents are absent today, but they kept going this way during all the years of the independence. This is not an easy way. It is evolutionary way. We have been built in Europe, in Ukraine, and still a lot needs to be done. One time I used to give the example. What were we doing all years of the independence? We tried to repair the old house. We whitewashed it, and in recent years we saw that nothing will come out of it, that we need to make the cardinal makeover of the house, and we started to do it in 2010. And if we had not taken this decision in 2010, this conference would be a different event. And of course, this is the merit of the opposition, because you are a valid part of society which supports you, and we treat with respect to every thought of the population. Political processes always either favor or hamper. Today, they favor. So I hope the relevant share of responsibility you bear as well, together with me.
Yanukovych has just told us that he's good at taking a hit. So I'm afraid there's another opposition leader who's waiting to ask a question. Arsenij Яценюк, прошу.
Don't be afraid. Пане президенте, дозвольте в першу чергу подякувати нашим європейським партнерам і президенту Литви за те, яким чином Україна рухається до Європейського Союзу. Я хотів би зараз звернутися саме до президента Януковича. У нас, Віктор Федорович, з вами зараз тимчасове перемир'я. І це тимчасове перемир'я зроблено виключно завдяки нашим європейським партнерам. Ми, як українська опозиція, все, що обіцяємо, все робимо. Я чув, що кажуть, що коли ви даєте слово, то ви також виконуєте свої слова. В одному з інтерв'ю, яке українська опозиція дуже детально дивилася, ви, пане президент, сказали, що Україна виконає всі критерії, необхідні для підписання угоди між Україною і Європейським Союзом. Ми свою частину виконання зробили. А саме я кажу про ті законопроекти...
На хвилинку, я думаю, що переклад не чути. Are people not hearing the translation?
Yeah, it's clear. The question is about Yulia, so... Тому, пане президенте, ми свою частину роботи...
Тоді скажіть коротко і тоді перекладіть.
Well, you can't speak briefly about Yulia. It has to be very... So we have done what we had to deliver on our promises on the European Union, and you said that you will deliver on all of your obligations, liabilities, and what you promised. And if I could ask you, could you, for the sake of Ukraine, deliver one of the key criteria which is needed for the signing of the treaty to stop the political persecution and free Yulia Tymoshenko? In this room, as Yura allowed me to say, there is a precedent of this, of such a case. Yuri Vitalyevich Lutsenko is not in prison anymore, as you can see. So the first question, what is the deadline? What is the timeline for complying with this key criteria of signing of this treaty?
The EU sets three key criteria. Do you still believe that Ukraine has to deliver and to execute all three criteria? Selective justice, election which is already executed, and prosecutor's office changing. Дякую.
Question for me was short. I will answer maybe first because President still has to resist large hit on him. But if serious, I'm congratulating opposition, because if you have peace for Europe, welcome. Europe is exactly about the peace all the time. So if Europe is guaranteeing peaceful development of Ukraine, please go long way towards Europe, because it will be long peace lasting and deep peace lasting. But shortly answering to your questions, yes. If I said in my speech, that means important.
all three, what I mentioned, are obligation. Without that, there will be no signature. And I want to be very clear, no illusions about that something will be a little bit done, or even in first reading in the Parliament. We will be, and Venice Commission will be looking to the final acceptance and final votes, and then, of course, in future implementation, but only goodwill and first reading, and then nothing, this will be not counted. And all three groups of elements which have been all the time on the table from European Union is still on the table. There is no any reason to change the position, even only because of pressure of fed countries. Lithuania is also on the same pressure. We have the same blockage on our borders, the same controls on our borders, because we would like you in Vilnius to be signing the treaty. So we're paying the same price as Ukraine.
Well, I have not raised deliberately gas issues in my remarks. I reiterate deliberately, have not raised this issue, but if you wanted me to speak about that, I will repeat time and again for those who did not hear that Ukraine during 2010, 11, 12 and 13 years pays the highest gas price in the world. The goods producers are represented in this hall, and they can confirm this today. We pay for gas more than Europe does, approximately by $150 US. These are the consequences of signing of the shameful agreement of 2009. Second point, today there are cases in the courts which still have to be considered and which still have to be addressed. Ukraine suffered big financial damage. I will not say which one. Courts will have to say and give the response. Now there are no response to these answers, and we are trying to find how to approach this most difficult question. In relation to Ms. Tymoshenko, I'm extremely grateful to the mission of the European Parliament, chaired by Cox and Kwasniewski, who, together with Ukraine, are trying to find the way out of this situation. If it had been easy, the response will be a simple one. On the contrary, the issue is not that easy. We still do have time, and according to the plan, we will keep working. By now, we have not said yes or no. The answer has to be in the legal framework that would allow us to find the solution. Thank you.
To add a little bit some examples on gas prices which Europe pays, not to have an impression that Ukraine is under largest pressure. So some smaller countries who would like to be more independent and feeling freedom is important still. So Lithuania is paying 30% more than Germany pays today, and a little bit more than Ukraine pays today. So Tymoshenko is here not in that case so important, because if we have Fed partner who wants to, let's say, to impose some politics, energy, especially energy using as political tool because of more sovereignty and independence mood. So we pay anyway. We do not have Tymoshenko, but we pay more even than you. So.
Пане президенте, хочете щось додати?
Mr. President, would you like to add something to this?
Well, I'm convinced that you're wrong. Could you tell me, please, the price you pay? $479, and the transit cost. It is more than 1,000 cubic meters, and you detract minus $60 for Ukraine. 479. In this case, in Ukraine, the price has to be nearly 400, while we pay 529 as of today, and then the discount 100. This is the price. What the discount matters. The discount is a military base. So jokes are out of place and bad for us. I would like to say that the discount in these 3 years, and thanks to that we have found this elation, but the losses around $20 billion that Ukraine sustained, and these losses were offset by the economy, by the shoulders of the Ukrainian population.
Metal in that category are getting very excited about this discussion of energy prices, so you guys can talk about it more over coffee and discuss with the two presidents. Are more questions? We still have a few minutes if people want to. Please.
Paweł Kowal, член Европейского парламента.
Member of European Parliament.
Конечно, вы знаете, что мы здесь встречаемся в Ялте. Много среди нас друзей Украины, но есть еще много в Евросоюзе скептиков. Такой вопрос.
Eurosceptics amongst us. Do you have any plans to work with skeptics? What can you say to those skeptics before the summit so that all countries support the signing of the association agreement? Thank you.
Firstly, I talked about this today, and I want to repeat that we are grateful to everyone who supports Ukraine on this way of the European integration, and all these years we have been working together with you and including you. This is the first point. I see that the number of skeptics is going down, and this because we are working together and we are moving forward. So the progress is underway. I have never made empty promises in my life. I want to say that really what we have done and what we will keep doing will be a natural way of Ukraine towards the European integration, but I say time and again that it will be the one which complies with the real state of affairs of our state within our society, in compliance with the political decisions which are taken. To demand something bigger today is news. We are satisfied that the number of our supporters is growing both in Ukraine, in Europe, and the world over. Thank you. One more question. Dear friends, I have the gratitude to two presidents, Mr. Cox and Mr. Kwasniewski, and one suggestion to President Yanukovych. Viktor Fedorovich.
Viktor Fedorovich, in Poland, the person who was in prison under communists, Mr. Adam Michnik, came to visit the round table with General Jaruzelski. This came to me yesterday when I was getting ready to come to you here. And I think that I had to do this because the signing of association treaty is the most important task of of this year. Even in prison, I was writing, there's nothing more important, including my imprisonment issue. But nevertheless, I would like to remind you that according to your constitutional mandate, there's no any other limitation about pardoning of any citizen of Ukraine than the ones that you will describe in your own decree. In Yulia's Vladimir case and in my case, the review and considering of the case that she was prosecuted for is finished. So I really hope that, and I'm really thankful that this experiment of mine was stopped by you. In this historical building where Europe was divided, the world was divided, where global issues were addressed, I call upon you, Viktor Fedorovich, the person who is not afraid of Putin, not to be afraid of Yulia Tymoshenko either. Accept that decision today. You're saying, asking, we're thinking about how to approach this. Well, as the person who was twice in prison, just to take a pen and just simply sign the decree that would give 100% guarantee that in Vilnius you would get the victory. This will be the biggest contribution and gratitude from everyone who dream about this to give up the personal issues and start the global strategy issues and addressing them. I would be grateful if you say yes.
Yuri Vitalyevich. Well, I'm first of all glad to see you. I have no reservations whatsoever that we are together with you in one building or at one table or holding talk. I'm glad to see you here, not to offend you relating to Tymoshenko. Figuratively and directly speaking, you are in a different weight categories. Would you please sit down? Please do not oversize yourself. Do not compare yourself. From the very outset, I told your colleagues, everyone who was in charge of your affair, court affair, that it is nonsense, it is rubbish, and I don't want to say what your guilt is. The court delivered this sentence, and I was absolutely against you being in prison. But it happened as it happened. So comparisons are a little bit incorrect. Comparison of you and Tymoshenko, your case and Tymoshenko's case. So it's incorrect, and you as a person, as an official who used to work in the law enforcement agencies understands perfectly well. I have already answered this question. Indeed, there is maybe no more person who is interested in resolving this case, but there are obstacles. If they had not been, we would resolve this case. The answer must be found to the cases which are now in the courtroom. Only the court can deliver on the response. What to do with Tymoshenko? The answer to this question is to find the compromise or response with the participation of Tymoshenko. Only the court and Tymoshenko herself can answer this question expeditiously. Thank you.
Okay, let's turn to that amazing Damien Hirst painting for a question from this end.
Michał Niewiadomski, Gala Polsko-Ukraińskiego Klubu Żurnalistów. My podgotowliwałem 15 i 16.
We are preparing a large conference on the 15th, 16th of October on Ukraine's European integration. And we would wish Ukraine to sign the association agreement. Poland would also support this step. But we have a huge question. What will you do when, unfortunately, in Vilnius, or if, unfortunately, the association agreement is not signed in Vilnius? What will you do in this case?
Life will go on, it will not stop. We will keep working on every venue and in every sector. Well, you know, today I don't want to make the forecasts or predictions. Any decisions are taken by both parties. As far as Ukraine is concerned, we said our word. We are expecting the response from the European Union.
More questions? Дякую дуже. More questions? This is such a rare opportunity here. Come on, I can ask more questions if people are lacking in energy and having a little bit of need of caffeine, but I'm going to give one more chance to the hall. Okay. I have a question actually for President Grybauskaitė. You spoke in your presentation about the pressure that Lithuania is under right now, partly to do with the association agreement in Ukraine. What is your expectation if the agreement is signed? Will that pressure increase? And you're a politician. What is the domestic reaction that you're facing because of this pressure?
So really the same, more or less the same timing than your country, Ukraine, started to receive pressures on the border. It's middle of the August. Afterwards, we started to receive very much similar pressures of controls and stoppages of some of our products on the border without explanation. Of course, we can only speculate the reasons. There is nobody declared that it's because of Eastern Partnership Summit, but we expect that probably one of the main reasons is not just Ukraine, but Eastern Partnership Summit and efforts which Lithuanian presidency in the European Council tries to pay attention towards Eastern partners, not only Ukraine, but it's Moldova also. Moldova also receives now huge pressures on blockage of wine, you know, the same on gas prices. So really the methods how Eastern partners are treated is similar and alike. So, but surprisingly, this was also applied to the European member and chairman of the European Council. So we're seeing the same. To speculate now what will happen if we will sign with Moldova and Ukraine, for example, can these measures will disappear? It very much depends on irritation on another side who applies it. And of course, having in mind that Lithuania 20 years ago was under the economic blockade already, in the beginning of the 90s, we had 8 months blockade on energy. During winter, we had no heat, nothing. Everything was blocked, and we had no oil, nothing. So really, we already gone through this period, not first time. This opposite unites people behind the country, behind independence. I think this happened in Ukraine. You got plus 8% pro-European ratings in your country because of that. So welcome.
Okay, so we have one more question here, please.
Дякую. Олексій Граньків.
Олексій Граньків, Kyiv Academy. I have a question to my president, Viktor Fedorovich Yanukovych. Since, well, I think we all want you to come into the history as the person who made the integration of Ukraine into Europe, and we really aspire to this, to really have you in the history with this big mark plus. And this is why I would like to ask you about your arguments, your arguments in terms of impossible pardoning of Tymoshenko. You have very good legal lawyers, but I think they have to tell you that these cases that are still being considered about Tymoshenko have no relation to the importance of your pardoning Tymoshenko, but because these cases haven't been proven yet, they are only in consideration, so they are not an impediment to you to take a pen, as Yuri Veselovich said, and just make this humane step that I think will be valued not only by Ukraine but the whole world. Thank you.
It's quite natural you ask this question, that it concerns you. Maybe there is no such an instrument or the tool to measure whose desire is bigger, you and me. I want to say that I have the desire at least equal to yours, and here we are allies with you.
Of questions, so I'll take three last questions all together, and then the presidents can answer, then we'll have to call it a day, so please.
Дякую. Павло Шеремета, Київська школа економіки.
Kyiv School of Economy, Pavlos Sheremet. Mr. President, as a person who became a president, I'm sure that you are able to think in global categories. Can we dream of coming not into the first 100 of doing business, but in the first 10 top?
Зростання ВВП, а плюс 5, 6, 8%, як росте Китай. Чи можемо мріяти не про $1 мільярд іноземних інвестицій, а 5-10 мільярдів?
Apparently the translation isn't working. Channel 2 is working, is not working. It's working. Channel 2, try. So try channel 2, everyone, okay?
По суті, запитання є, ви є в посаді, яка...
So you are now in position that should empower a nation for big achievements, and I would like to for you to do this.
They wish to reply to.
From Polish Parliament, I have a question to Madam President. When NATO was enlarging, so then Russia got a proposal of having a council, NATO, Russia, and somehow relaxed the tension between the Western countries and Russia. My question is whether today, during this crisis and tension, what is the proposal of the European Union vis-à-vis Russia, somehow to show them the future of the common economic space from Vancouver to Vladivostok? And is Europe trying to somehow find a perspective for Russia also within this common European space to intensify this offer, this alternative to the conflict and barriers, the more openness? Is Europe doing something in this direction?
Okay, thank you. And then we have a question from Australia.
Yeah, I suppose I'm from the second part of this conference, Ukraine in a changing world. So forgive me moving away from internal politics and asking you just simply about where is Ukraine in its resources, in its growing, and Lithuania too, Madam President, in its attracting investment from around the world to develop your rich resources. My company's been spending around $1 billion a month for the last couple of years. That's created thousands of jobs. It's influenced the gross domestic product and the output of Australia. It is changing the standard of living of Australians as we move towards a changing world, which is the 3 billion people who really do matter economically, and that's the developing world. Lithuania and Ukraine has fabulous resources undeveloped, which could also lift the standard of your own people. How is your regulation and your attraction of foreign investment?
Okay, I'm going to ask President Grybauskaitė to answer those questions first, followed by President Yanukovych.
Starting from last, on attraction, we cannot compare, at least for now, because all our regulatory framework is acquis communautaire of the European Union. That means general rules of taxation, on investment protection, all these are the same. So what we can say that probably still the difference is between the labor costs, which are more attractive yet, but the rest is European standard. Probably for Ukraine is still a lot more maybe to offer. It depends on businesses. But we now attracting mainly added value businesses, not basics, because we are not a very large country, we have limited human resources, no practically other resources, only people, and it's mainly high-tech, biotechnology, lasers, all these kind of things. Now, if I can try to answer the question about European Union and Russia relations. Of course, European Union always is open for economic relations. They always have been developing. We are preparing for European and Russia summit, yes, in November. And of course, energy questions are always on the table. But discussions not always easy, especially then both, let's say, regions. Europe was in economic difficulties. Russia is now feeling economic difficulties. Of course, in such environment, usually the blocks, trade blocks, are protecting their borders or their interest. But openness, the partnership, is declared in all agreements and which have been signed between Europe and Russia. And of course, there is no sense to fight or to have the war between trading blocks. Of course, Russia now is going more towards creating special economic unit as custom union. We are enlarging our European territory with association, free trade treaties. Why Eastern Partnership is welcome to participate in that. But of course, nobody's closing the borders in 21st century. It's impossible. And Europe as NATO is open for trustful, respectful, based on civil trade, well, trade organization at least regulations, trade system, which we do not see until now to be implemented from another part. So, but we always open, and I think the future in Europe is with all countries around us, and everybody is welcome to trade, to live together in peace and friendship.
Panie prezydencie, ostatnie słowo wasze.
Mr. President, your last word.
Well, today, the opportunities which Ukraine enjoys now to attract investments, I would say they are more attractive than in the developed countries in the world. What we lack, what is the shortcoming? We lack the legislative framework, and we are working on it, the conditions for doing business and investment protection. These laws will be passed in the nearest time. As far as the sectors of the economy is concerned, I would say there is a wide choice of attracting investments, and whatever direction you can look at, there is the attractiveness, the investment capacity of Ukraine was measured differently in different times. I remember the last figure, and here I say my advisors on economic affairs, and we calculated to be $500 billion. So please, we always are ready with our partners to conduct negotiations as for the viability and efficacy of attracting investments and payback period. Today, in Ukraine, it is quite popular qualifications as the manager of investment projecting, and when we participate in the investment forums, we always propose specific, concrete investment projects to choose from. So we will be glad to see you with the investments in Ukraine.
Just a final blitz round, if I can, just a yes or no question to both presidents. Will Ukraine sign the agreement in Vilnius in
It depends only on Ukraine now. I think, because we very much ready, open and willing, but I think we still have 30 minutes with President, eye to eye. Maybe afterwards it will be absolutely clear what will happen.
Mr. President, last question, yes or no, will Ukraine sign the agreement in Vilnius? We have...
No reservations. It goes without saying.